first of all, I would say, yes, there is something wrong with you because there's something wrong with all of us. And that's okay. Right? We need to get over this idea that there's not going to be anything wrong with me. It's okay that you have anxiety. It does not mean that you're a faithless Christian.
What am I supposed to do about my anxiety? We're back this week to wrap up our very first question in this new Big Questions series on After 4. Last week, we started learning the 3 A's for developing a healthier approach to managing anxiety. We covered avoiding less and started accepting more. This week, licensed clinical counselor and spiritual director Nader Sahyouni returns to finish clarifying what it means to accept more and how to attach better, to wrap up the 3 A's together, and to help all of us take a practical, gracious approach to managing anxiety with Jesus by our side. If you missed it, you can check the show notes for part 1 and get up to speed. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. Yeah. And just for the sake of clarity, the thing that you are accepting more in these circumstances, I mean, is it just that you are accepting that sometimes like gross things just happen? And I'm going to accept the fact that more than likely I'm going to be able to engage with this and I will be just fine. And even if I did get sick from this, which I know is like, that is like legitimate anxiety that you experience, like that is actually something that you're anxious about. But that even if I did get a little bit sick from this, like more than likely, what's the worst thing that would happen to me if I got a little bit sick? And like, can you just clarify a little bit to make sure that we know, like, what is it that you are accepting more of in these scenarios?
Yeah, John, I missed explaining that more in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
So thank you for asking that. The thing that we are accepting more is the lack of certainty.
Okay.
We get anxious when we can't be certain that the thing that we're anxious about won't happen.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we're trying to become safe by feeling certain about the future.
Yes. Which then would more than likely could lead to further avoidance. If I can't be certain, then I'm just not even going to go out there and try. Because something could go wrong and I don't want to deal with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or you could try to seek even more reassurance by trying to overplan. If they say this, I'm going to say that. And I'm going to plan the first 5 minutes of the conversation and the second 5 minutes. And I'm going to plan and plan and plan and plan. And that's where people start to overplan and overfunction. And then they feel more and more anxious.
Yes. And then you start to see how the opposite of these 3 A's that you're explaining to us, how they all just feed into each other, just sort of unwatched. Yep. They all just sort of strengthen the other one, downward spiral, and it just gets worse and worse.
Exactly. And social media is another place where reassurance seeking becomes a big issue. So when I first wrote my book, people told me you need to get an Instagram account. And so I created an Instagram account. I started posting. The first post I looked, it got so many likes, a couple of shares, great. And the second one I noticed didn't do well. So I started checking again. I was checking. I'm like, wait a minute, why am I anxious about this? Well, it's because I'm checking. I'm seeking reassurance that I'm still liked, that I'm still popular, that people still think I have valid things to say. So social media gives us a scorecard about our social acceptance and how we're doing relative to our peers. And that's important to the brain. Because when you think about primitive humans, they relied on belonging to their social clan, to their families, their tribes, or security. And so rejection brings the danger of rejection, exile. So think of Hagar, Abraham and Hagar, right? Hagar's exile. She's at risk of dying. Yeah. Right. So in our brains, rejection is deeply felt. It's not just a first world problem. Rejection is, our brain interprets it as serious business. So when we start to feed that anxiety by looking at the scorecard of social media, we just feed the anxiety machine about social anxiety.
Yes, which is really interesting because that would give us some sort of, whether it's true or not, it would give us some sort of objective measurement, especially if it's somebody that we see on a regular basis, that if they'd never like my posts. So then next time I see them in real life, does this person actually like me? And so maybe I just avoid talking to this person in real life because I have some sense of they don't like my pictures, so they don't like me. And that we like you said, we have this scorecard that actually doesn't equate to reality. This person loves you beyond belief, but that maybe they just hate Instagram. They just don't like. But because we've got those numbers and those little hearts and things that people can give us, that can make us wrongly interpret the way that people feel about us, which can then just feed into isolation and anxiety. And oh boy, it's so fascinating how those things can play together. And yes, how social media can just feed into that so easily.
Yeah, exactly. So before I tell people how to pray, I want to talk a little bit about how not to pray.
Okay. So, great.
I want to give an example of I told you guys, I used to get anxious when my kids would get sick. So when they were very young, my prayer changed from being, kind of a conversation with God and sharing my feelings with him to, oh God, please make sure they don't get pneumonia. Oh God, please make sure they don't get kidney disease. God, please make sure they don't, get a brain tumor. God, blah, blah, blah. And then, just praying for all sorts of things. Well, what is that? That's reassurance seeking, right?
Yes.
I'm trying to use that prayer time to get God's reassurance that everything's going to be all right. Well, then I had this dream. And in this dream, I was eating this meal and I couldn't get the food to my mouth with the spoon because there were so many flies around and I was swatting at the flies.
Interesting.
And so, it seemed to me pretty clear. God was saying the flies were the anxiety. And the food I was trying to eat was the spiritual food, the spiritual nourishment of daily prayer. And when I was trying to swat the anxieties, my reassurance seeking was preventing me from getting spiritual sustenance. It was ruining my prayer life.
Yeah.
And so instead, a better way to pray would be, if you are anxious about something, once again, work on discernment of whether you should be seeking reassurance. Ask God, is this the right way to pray? Should I be praying less? Obviously, God didn't even wait for me to ask that. He just told me, stop it.
Yeah.
It's not good for you. Get some confirmation from others. Just like the avoidance prayer, right? Try to, use community to get some clarity as to what is reasonable and what's not. And then once you're clear, ask for the strength, the courage, and the motivation to not seek reassurance. And once again, relational and prayer support where needed.
Yes.
So when we put the two together, the avoidance and not avoiding and not reassurance seeking, there's a prayer model that we can learn from Jesus and Paul.
Okay.
So Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane and Paul, when he was praying about the thorn in his flesh, both prayed in an identical, similar pattern. And we can learn from that in the face of any kind of distress, but I certainly use it a lot in the face of anxiety. So they both started by asking God to take it away. So God, would you take it away? So I called it the please section. God, would you please take it away? Okay. They both did that. Jesus asked if there was another way. Paul asked that the thorn be taken from him.
Right.
And they both asked 3 times. Now, I don't think there's anything special about 3 times. It's just that that's how long it took them to discern that the answer was no. Right? Maybe for us, it will take a little bit longer. Most likely it would. But in the case of anxiety, it's actually not that hard to determine that the answer is no, because if I'm still anxious, the answer, at least for now, is no.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, we would be gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Now, it may go away. Probably will go away in a few hours, few days, few months, whatever. Right. But for now, the answer is no. So the model still applies. And if we look at the next step of the model, determining that the answer is no, Jesus heard from God, or he discerned from God that the cross was God's will and that he was not going to take this cup from him. In the case of Paul, God told him that his grace was sufficient for Paul. And so then they moved on to step number 3, and that is acceptance. Jesus accepted the cross. Paul accepted the thorn in his flesh. But it wasn't a kind of like a giving up kind of acceptance, like, ho hum, woe is me, terrible things, I have to live with it. Oh, well, let's just grit our teeth and get by and get through it. No. Hebrews tells us Jesus went to the cross for the joy set before him. Hebrews 12:2. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. And then for Paul, 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest in me. So they both know that there is some redemption that's at work here. And then they can be positive and they can move to gratitude about that. And so we have to have some sense of redemption, some sense that God is going to use our suffering somehow, some way for good. That's what New Testament teaches. If we don't, we really need to press into that, learn about that, grow in that. We have to have some theology of suffering. Right?
Yeah.
Suffering is part of the equation. There's no way around it. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, in my book, I have a chapter called The Cost of Resisting the Cross. Very often we create so much more suffering just by resisting, what God is doing.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay.
So then the accepting with the hope for redemption, that becomes really important. And one way that that's helpful is with gratitude. And that really helps in the brain because, when they do imaging research on people that they give exercises to do gratitude. So they're giving people exercises to do gratitude. They put them in a functional MRI machine and they take pictures of the brain. There are 2 structures that light up. And one of them is called the anterior cingulate cortex. And that part of the brain is involved in emotional regulation. It is part of the brain that calms down the amygdala. So in Philippians 4:6, when Paul says, do not be anxious for anything, like you brought up, John, earlier, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. He's leveraging the neuroscience in the brain.
No way.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is so crazy. Okay.
So what I suggest to people then is the 3 steps to use following Jesus and Paul is to say, please, God, please take it away. And the second, if the answer is no, the answer is, then it's yes, acceptance. And then thank you, gratitude for the good that God is bringing out of this. And in the midst of it, I'm not going to know what that good is. So it requires faith. It's a stretching of faith. It's kind of like doing push-ups, right? It's definitely working those muscles of faith. It's not easy, but it changes our relationship to the suffering. We start to experience it differently. And so the gratitude part, I actually suggest people to move it up in the order to make it easier to accept. So rather than please, yes, and thank you, I suggest people do the please, thank you, and yes.
Interesting. Okay.
So let's say, for example, that I might be anxious about coming on this podcast. And I'll say, Lord, please, would you take away the anxiety? It's not gone away, so I'm still anxious. So then I say, Jesus, thank you for the way you're going to redeem my anxiety somehow, some way. I don't know how. Maybe it's through the podcast, maybe through some other way. I really don't know. But I know that the Bible says so, and I believe it. And so thank you. Thank you that you're going to redeem this anxiety. And yes, I accept it. I accept that I have to deal with this right now. And I'm going to be just putting myself in your hands, Lord. I surrender it. So yes, please. Please, thank you, and yes. That's the order that I suggest.
Wow. See, it's really interesting to me because I even think about, it makes me think about considering my life as a ratio. And the more time that I spend being grateful, recognizing the things that I have to be thankful for, the things that I have to be grateful for, it seems like it grows the ratio of the good things in my life in comparison to the things that cause me anxiety. Like when I'm spending so much time thinking about what I feel anxious about or what I'm concerned about happening, that just becomes so big. Like I'm zooming in on this one element. And instead, if I spend time being grateful, if I spend time considering the ways that God has been at work in my life and saying, thank you, wow, thank you for this, and this, it feels like it grows my perspective. It helps me zoom out. And instead of what is that term that my professor taught me in anxiety about, that we tend to like maximize the negative or right. and minimize the positive.
It's a cognitive distortion.
Yes. That we flip that on its head, and instead we zoom back and we see the bigger collection of good things that God has done in my life, and that actually this thing that is very serious, like that it like I don't want to belittle the anxiety that people experience, because it can feel like a mountainous thing. But when we take time to step back and to zoom out, it's like, wow, in proportion to the other good things that are going on in my life, this is a much smaller portion of my life than I might realize. And if God's working in all of these things, is it possible that He could be at work in this thing too? If my
John, actually, I'm going to have to add that to my exercise, because I love it. I think it's excellent. The idea of confronting the cognitive distortion like that through gratitude is fantastic.
Yeah. Great.
The thing I will say, though, when it comes to being thankful for God working in the anxiety, working redemption in the anxiety, is that it increases faith that He is at work in this circumstance.
Yes.
Right? And that's one positive. So to get the best of both worlds, I would suggest they do both. Your professor's exercise and what I'm suggesting.
Yes, absolutely. That's fantastic. Okay, then I think does this bring us to our third A, which is not the low hanging fruit. So here's the challenging one, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So this is the challenging one, but it is the most fun. Right. So awesome. At least this one is not painful to do.
Okay.
So the third A takes longer, and it's attached better. And the way where I kind of stumbled on this is that I noticed that when I used to be anxious, people would tell me, and I still get anxious, of course, but people would tell me, you have to trust God more. In particular, my dad, had the natural gift for trusting God, but I didn't. And so he would just tell me, I have to trust. And to me, it felt like he was speaking a foreign language. I'm like, what does that even mean? Trust God. God's not going to stop bad things from happening. So what's the point of trusting Him? So I started to read lots of books about trusting God. And, I was thinking maybe if I could figure out how God's sovereignty interacts in a world of cause and effect, where somebody could do some crazy thing and drunk driver could, really hurt my family. Maybe if I could figure that out, then I could learn to trust God. Well, it did help a little bit, but not a ton. Like, I remember one particular book stood out to me was a book by the Navigators called Trusting God When Life Doesn't Make Sense, or something like that, by a guy called Gerald. Gosh, now I'm not going to remember his name. Anyway, the book talks about the fact that because God is most powerful, God is most wise, God is most loving, I can therefore trust Him. And can't argue with that theology. It's 100% correct, right? But somehow, after reading that book, I was still anxious.
Yes.
And I think the reason is that book is speaking to the left prefrontal cortex. It's speaking to the rational part of my brain above my left eye. But that's not where the anxiety is, right? The anxiety is in emotional centers of the brain that are tied into a whole other set of circuits that work much faster than cognition. And So what are those circuits? Well, one of the things I realized over the years is that I was growing indeed in trusting God, but it wasn't by reading. I was growing through prayer. By experiencing God in prayer, I was growing and trusting God. And I was like, oh, how is this working? And then I came across the science of attachment. So in attachment science, it started in the 1950s. And the scientists that were researching it, they were looking at mothers in Uganda, and they were like noticing that the mother would hold the child really close and then would put the child down and the child would explore. And if the child would get hurt or get hungry or something, they'd crawl back to mom. Mom would pick up the child, comfort the child, give the child food, whatever it needed. And the child would calm down. And then, because they experienced that security, then the next time she put the child down, they could explore further and further. Yeah. So they called the mom the secure base. And so if people successfully experience a secure base after feeling distress in a repeated fashion, then they develop an attachment to the caregiver. And they experience that secure base in such a way that that sense of security stays with them as they go out into real life. And I noticed that I was learning that through my time with Jesus. My time with Jesus was becoming my secure base. That I would come to Jesus with my challenges and I would tell him my feelings that things that I was upset about. I would receive his comfort. And that would build that attachment, that sense of secure base, so that then I could go out into the world and feel a little bit more secure. And that took a long time. That's on the order of months and years.
Yes.
But, hopefully we'll spend the rest of our times learning to follow Jesus. So we want to be at least learning in the right direction.
Right.
And so over time and over the years, that started to increase trust. Is by receiving God's care and by seeing him intervene in my life. You get a sense of his power. You get the sense that, this guy can take care of me. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
And because I've experienced that attachment to him, when he doesn't and something goes wrong, then I can trust, for some reason he knows, that this is somehow all right in his eyes.
Yeah. Which just really speaks to some of the ongoing encouragement that we don't just give to alumni, that we give to one another of continuing to lean in with the Lord, even in the times like it feels like, man, where is God in this situation? Because those are the places that I think if we sort of weather some of those storms with God, we're able to look back and say, oh, actually, you know what? Now I can see the places where God was at work, and I can see that he was faithful through these difficult times, and that continues to reinforce trust in him, and that we have this sense of like, oh yeah, my trust in him, the comfort and the peace that I experience when I spend time in his presence, that really is growing and developing, even if I don't always notice it in the moment. Like you said, that you started to recognize, it's not coming from just learning new stuff. It's coming from developing this very real relational and emotional attachment with the Lord that sort of like then sends me back into the world to courageously try to trip and fall down and stand up and come back to the Lord and to have some of that space to explore and to try again. But like you said, that it takes time. It takes time. It takes commitment and continuing to come back and spend that time in the Lord's presence to be sent back out again into the very real world of yes. That is fascinating, and I can see why you say this is the one that's fun, but this is the one that takes time. It takes time to see it happening.
It does, and that time with the Lord needs to be relational. If you're sitting in that time with the Lord and going through a list of requests, bless you. That's great. I'm glad. If you need to pray those, that's wonderful. I certainly have my lists, but I pray those at a different time. My time with the Lord, I have to protect the relational aspect of it. Yeah. I tell people that they need to tell God about the difficulties in their life as if he doesn't know any of the details.
Wow.
Because that will start the relational circuits in the brain going. And if you think about it, even though God knows, like with my grandchildren, I get down on my hands and knees to play with them. I want to be at eye level. And God does that with us in prayer. He gets down to our level.
Yeah.
And so we do need to tell him, just like the psalmist does, in very clear, vivid detail, everything that we're experiencing. Yeah, I do have a final wrap-up word around attachments and attaching to God in particular. I want to just encourage people to know that it's okay to have challenges in prayer. It's okay to experience some dryness. It's not okay to neglect it. If you need help, find a spiritual director, find a mentor, read books, listen to podcasts, try different things. If it's not joyful, then you're probably on the wrong track. Not definitely, but probably. If it's at least not joyful, like for a 2-3 week period, 2 or 3 days, press through it, but if it's, and I've talked more about this on the previous podcast. But,
yes, I was going to say we're gonna direct people to some of our previous conversations, because that really is just, there's a lot you're talking about here that just direct us right back to some of these other things. We've got helpful tools for you already made, alumni. So
exactly. So that would be the thing is, get some help if you get stuck, but don't give up on it, because it really helps to change the baseline of anxiety. It's not an anxiety, cure-all, and it's not going to have the same immediate impact as the first 2 A's. But over time, that change in baseline will help. But more importantly, your relationship with God will be at a whole other level. And then you will have turned, with God's help, anxiety into a huge blessing.
Wow. Which feels like words that you would not expect to be spoken. The idea of turning anxiety into a blessing. You would think like, and here's how you get rid of anxiety in your life. Instead, no, this is the way that we can, this is an opportunity. This is fascinating. This is all boy, we've gone places I didn't expect, Nader, and I'm so excited. This is amazing stuff that you are sharing with us, and you've already given us so many practical things in our conversations together, and I'm wondering, is there a final piece of advice or a pastoral word that you would give to an alum who's experiencing anxiety, who is questioning, like, is there something, I'm supposed to be anxious about nothing? Is there something wrong with me here? Like, what do I do next? Is there a word of next step or encouragement that you would give, as we certainly encourage them to take to heart the things that we've already been talking about?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say, yes, there is something wrong with you, because there's something wrong with all of us, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to get over this idea that there's not going to be anything wrong with me.
Yeah.
So yes, it's okay that you have anxiety. It does not mean that you're a faithless Christian. Abraham was anxious. Abraham made decisions out of fear, and God did an incredible turn of history that we are all blessed by so many generations later. And so don't beat yourself up if you're anxious, but do seek the Lord. Is this something that you can handle maybe with a little support from your friends? Is this something where you need to get some inner healing prayer for? Is this something where you need some therapy to work through? And especially if you're aware that your perception of reality is inaccurate, don't let that go, because that could affect many aspects of your life. And so once again, present to the Lord, Lord, how do you want to correct this in my life? And I trust that God will show you.
So what should you do about your anxiety? I wish I could say it's simple. I wish I could say it's easy, but I'm not sure it's either of those things. In fact, if you're dealing with anxiety in any sort of significant way, I don't think it would be responsible for me to say that it's either of those things. But what I can say is that there's hope and there is a path forward. Nader laid out a roadmap for us. Number 1, we avoid less and we train our brain that we can experience the thing that makes us anxious without the worst case scenario happening. 2, we accept more, that we just don't have control over every aspect of life, that we can't plan for every scenario, and that's okay. 3, we attach better with a loving God who is in control of the outcomes and who walks through life with us, even though it doesn't mean that he always keeps us from uncomfortable scenarios. And through all of it, we lean into discernment with God. We invite trusted advisors into our decision-making, and we prioritize intimate moments with the Lord where we're simply spending time together, growing in a loving, trusting relationship with Him. It's not necessarily a recipe for eliminating anxiety. In fact, just like Jesus and the cross or Paul and the thorn in his flesh, it's possible that God may be asking you to live with the reality of anxiety, which may be an invitation to suffer. And that's hard, alumni. But it's also an opportunity to see God move in ways that you never would have expected and to see Him do a work of redemption in the midst of anxiety. I hope this feels like a helpful roadmap for doing that well. Nader, thanks so much for joining us again on After 4. Once again, I'm so grateful for your thoughtful leadership in this area. Alumni, check the show notes for more resources from Nader, and then be sure to come back next week as we answer the question, how do I lead after graduation? Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.